My descent into mental illness was like a death. Everything stopped.
I was hospitalized probably over a dozen times.
There is no what if with mental illness. It's there with you the rest of your life.
I was pretty lost at the time, you know. I would think of just kind of fleeing in a way, of being a fugitive to my own self, you know.
The mind is the computer, and that makes the decisions, and that's very sick.
I've seen people die of cancer and lots of other things, but I think mental illness is the saddest illness in the world.
We all feel the same way. It's like losing a child, but we don't lose them. They become just strangers to us. With Conrad, 10 years later, when he got sick with the same illness, Wellspring was available, and I was determined that he would not slip into the streets. I mean, it wasn't a normal existence. We tried to make it as normal. We lived on a very normal street, and, you know. But I can remember on that normal street, after Billy got ill, I didn't feel as comfortable there because people really kind of wanted me to move.
My son David had developed a mental illness back in the late 70s. It was very difficult because he had been a great athlete, all-state football player at Trinity, and it was just hard to accept, and I was a little bit embarrassed. I have to admit, I kind of hid it for a lot of years. It kept getting worse and worse, and lots of jail time, lots of hospitals, lots of living on the streets. And I, one minute would feel very bad for him, and the next minute I would want to goose him into doing better.
She had been in the top 10 of her class and been pursued by about a dozen colleges. She chose MIT. Time went by and she kind of lost touch with us. Finally, one day the call came. She said she wanted to come home. It wasn't until she attacked me at home that I realized that she was seriously ill. I just sat her down one day and said, it's either me or you going to get help.
The world really stopped meeting my expectations, you know, for what I thought would be my future. Just in a matter of about 4 or 5 days, you know, I started feeling really anxious all the time, and I couldn't sleep, and I didn't really feel like eating and stuff like that. I had to go through a hospitalization. It was partially the times, you know, and part of it really was physical, I think. It's still a mystery of why people suddenly get schizophrenia.
Mental illness typically strikes in late adolescence, early adulthood, and people are getting on with their lives. They have goals and aspirations, and certainly mental illness is not part of that equation. Mental illness cuts across all boundaries. It affects people who have lots of money and people who are very poor.
I was a U of L graduate, and my father died about that time. I was hospitalized a number of times.
Recovery from mental illness does not mean cure. Recovery means helping people find a meaningful life. And that's what Wellspring is all about, helping each person find meaning in their own life. For some people, that means getting a job. For some people, that might mean having a volunteer job. For somebody else, maybe it's school.
I get to share my experiences in recovery. It's really a fulfilling feeling.
I am a symbol of hope. Somebody can actually have a meaningful, fulfilling life beyond their mental illness. If I can do it You can do it.
What recovery really means is redefining yourself in light of this illness. What are my goals now? And what do I want to achieve? And how am I going to get there? Wellspring can help with that.
The crisis center was open. I took her down with her father, and we left her there, and the guys down there said, well, you can go ahead and go now. We'll take care of Sally. And I thought, oh, my God, someone to help, you know. So we left her. They did take care of her. Well, and she kind of came alive. The staff people called me one day, and they said, well, she's smiling and talking to people, and she would like to see you.
We have been very true to the mission of the CSU since we opened in '95. It is for people who are in psychiatric crisis. We don't take people in for situational crises or for respite because it's too precious a resource.
In February of '05, when David got real psychotic, we tried to talk him into the hospital, and he just would not go. He said, I will not go. One day he said, I'll go to the CSU. So I called the people at Wellspring, and they said, it's a small place. It only has 8 beds, and at that time they were full, but we think there will be an opening in a day or two. So I told David, can you hang on? Well, the next day they called me and said, there's an opening. And I couldn't get a hold of David. And by that time he had caught a bus and gone to Nashville and jumped off the bridge. So if the CSU had been bigger, if there were more CSUs, my son might be alive today.
There are so many people out there that need this. Their families are struggling with something way beyond them. It's kind of like treating a cancer with an aspirin. You just can't do it. I just am so thankful for Wellspring. I think the last, 4.5 years of Conrad's life were probably the happiest since he'd been 15. And that's a lot of years to be out there from 15 to 39. And so when he passed away, I felt, I got him in what I think was the best place in Kentucky.
Having a home is foundational for recovery.
Housing is my passion for mental health volunteer work, and Wellspring happens to be the only organization in the Louisville area devoted to housing for the mentally ill.
Wellspring saved my life, When I had shelter and food and clothing due to Wellspring, I owe my better moments that I've had in my life to the fact that Wellspring was there.
I hope people realize that there's a good prognosis for people with mental illness, and there is a future for people, especially nowadays. With Wellspring, there is hope. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright, blessed day, the dark, sacred night, and I think to myself, oh, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know, and I think